According to a recent survey, 62% of Americans are more nervous about their retirement today than they were a year ago. We discuss why they should be, as well as what they can do about it this week. So as I said, a recent study, which actually came out at the end of June, so even after the rebound this year, found that 62% of Americans are more nervous about their retirement than they were 1 year ago. We're going to cover some reasons why they should be that have nothing to do with anything that's happened in 2020, as well as some possible solutions that require a little bit of work, but can help alleviate so many of those concerns. So the first thing is, why should people be nervous? Well, this comes back to the 4% rule, AKA the 60-40, and there have been a ton of articles. You can Google this and easily pull up dozens that say something like, is the 4% rule dead? Is the 60-40 model dead? What they're getting at is, is what's worked in the past going to continue to work in the future? To answer that question, you need to know what makes up the 4% rule. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. Even in my career, they've learned how to parrot things. They've never actually gone back and read the white paper that this is based off. So in 1991, a California university professor did a 25-year look back looking at stocks and bonds in the 60-40 mix and said, hey, if a person retired and put their mix into this and took a 4% distribution rate, basically how long would their money have lasted? And we found yes, it would have lasted at least 20 years. There's a few holes in this theory though. The components, obviously the 60% in stocks, the 40% in bonds, and Matt's telling me this looks like life expectancy. I told him it's a fancy L. But people's life expectancy are the three big variables that we have to look at in evaluating this question of, is the 4% rule, is the classic 60-40 dead? Stocks, as long as they can get a 6-7+ % rate of return, which would have been the case over this study, and a lot of projections moving forward have them in that 6+% type range. That's been actually their average over the last 20 years. That's not necessarily the biggest problem. Where the wheels start to come off is with fixed income. For most of that 25-year time frame, the 40, the bonds, still got you an income stream and total return in the high single digits. So it was a very nice buffer and complementary point for both volatility and return to anything that happened on a year-to-year basis for stocks. But today, rather than that, we're sitting at anywhere from 0.5% to 1.5%, whether you want to use treasuries or the bark ag. And when we model, whether it's using the last 20 years S&P 500 performance or what projections JP and Goldman and others are using for the next 10 or 20 years based off current valuation metrics, this isn't going to get it done. And what we found using a $2 million hypothetical household, taking out 4 or 5%, is that they've actually drawn their account down after 20 years to about $500,000. Now, it's a hypothetical, but it's based on some pretty good assumptions. And most people, as much as they like to joke about being okay or wanting to spend their last dollar, would get pretty unnerved seeing their account have evaporated by 3/4 of its original value. And again, just being 80, 85 years of age, when studies show one of two spouses will usually live into their 90s now for couples who are entering into retirement. And that gets to the third part that's falling apart is that study was based using a 20 to 25 year life expectancy in retirement, and people are living much, much longer than that in retirement. So very simply, doesn't take a math wizard. You can see how the math behind this just doesn't function moving forward. So what's the fix? We've heard us talk a lot about the high income series. I'm not going to go into that at length again, but the idea is you can find a definable income source that is that 4 to 5% to live off of. And that's certainly one methodology, but it doesn't require that. You could also use a methodology that is more total return based. The issue is needing to move away in some form from the 60-40. Whether you want to stay US with your equities or go to global does have an impact on some forward projections. It's a conversation for another day. But the key thing is the 40. Finding a way to address that part of your portfolio that needs to at least keep up with inflation, but more reasonably probably needs to be closer to 4 or 5% itself to help buffer. And what we found, again, using both historic information and reasonable projections is as you start to add in more asset classes, your probabilities not only of maintaining your original value, but even increasing your account over time go up. And that's what we want to do. So in conclusion, if you're one of the 62% who's feeling more nervous about retirement than you were a year ago, there's a good reason for that. What's worked in the past is unlikely to work moving forward. But the good news is, again, there is something you can do about it. There's still a lot of options and trade-offs to be able to make to find your correct style and still have something that substantively is going to work for you and your family. We're here to help anytime. Thank you, as always, for tuning in.